Project Dig Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Josh Fonger. How you doing today, Josh?
Doing good.
Fantastic. Well, I am so excited to be chatting with you today. You rock, and I want to talk about all the reasons why. So I really want to know, what is your story?
Well, the whole story or just part of it, the business part, right?
Oh, no, the whole story from the very beginning.
Started off at conception, cell is divided. No, so in terms of doing the business stuff, that book right there behind me for those watching the video, getting connected with Sam Carpenter, the best-selling author of the book Work the System. That happened in my 20s as I was floating around doing consulting from location to location to location. So basically, I was a traveling business consultant, and that wears on the family and it wears on your health. And so after doing that for years, I ran to Sam and came up with a better way to help companies. And then he and I started working together. And over the last 8 years, we've built out this company called Work the System.
Right. Well, that's the short version. But how did you get there? Like, why? How did you get to the point where you were doing consulting? Like, what led to that?
Yeah, well, that was definitely not by choice. My undergraduate's in architecture, so I thought I was going to be an architect. Then got my master's in business, so I thought I'd be more of a real estate developer. And so working in the Phoenix area, commercial real estate, project management, and helping those companies, those locations grow. And what happened was 2007, 2008 happened, and me and everyone else lost their job. And I had to kind of reinvent my life and figure out what was I going to do, because otherwise it was a 90% pay cut if I was going to get working in real estate again. And that wasn't really ideal for family life where it was. And so basically after applying to jobs everywhere in the world, in every kind of field, because I had my master's in business, so I thought, well, someone's going to hire me. And no one was hiring. No one was hiring, and I was getting nothing. And so I got to the point where I was actually applying to jobs I didn't even want. And one of those jobs being a business consultant. I wrote my thesis paper in my MBA program about why you should never hire a business consultant. And so I was not keen on taking this role. My dad was not a big fan of business consultants. My father-in-law really didn't like them. And my research was, they're not really that effective. They're really expensive, and you should just do it on your own. And so anyways, I got to the point where I was just applying for those jobs. I was like, well, I got an MBA. Maybe someone will hire me as a business consultant. And that's what happened. Kind of providentially, serendipitously, I got a job as a contractor helping this other firm grow. And that's how it all happened. And it was funny because the guy said, you get to keep 50% of what you sell. And so you have to hunt it, and then you have to skin it, and then you get to eat 50% of it. And he gave me this list, and it was December. And we were bare bones at this point, like lost the house, lost the car, lost all savings,
Wow.
all investments, basically severely negative, living in my in-laws condo at this point. It was bad. In your early 20s, you don't save a lot of money. And so I needed to make some money. And he said, here's a list. You go call these people cold in December and try to sell them a financial model, basically a financial model, a budget to forecast the next 2 years. And then every time you sell someone one of these financial models, then you can build them the financial model. And there was 3,000 phone numbers. And so I just on the phone, hammering. And I think I made, I made him $16,000, which meant I kept $8,000 that first month. And I was like, okay, well, I can eat this month. And then, next month, better and better and better. But, one of those things where if you have to eat, you're more disciplined and you'll put in the work. And so that's how I got into consulting.
That is, sometimes I struggle with the concept of irony. I'm pretty sure this is it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is the one. That's amazing. So you wrote your thesis on not hiring a consultant.
Yeah.
And then you became one.
Yeah, well, it was, I think it's like an act of God. I think it's God's humor. But when I was doing the phone interview for this, because I had very few phone interviews, and the guy was like, "Are you good on stage?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Are you good at presenting?" "Yeah, definitely, great." And I'm extremely shy, introverted. Like my entire elementary, middle school, and high school, I don't think I ever raised my hand, not even once. Like I had zero class participation like that, very deathly afraid of any kind of this situation. And so to get the job, he's sending me out to go present and speak and, why don't you do this workshop or do this workshop? And I was like, okay, this is like the skill set that I have no skill in. And you have to get good fast. So I was the guy, reading like 4 books on the way, flying somewhere to give a seminar, and just had some really good success with these clients miraculously, and really enjoyed the work, enjoyed helping companies. I started off years ago helping flooring companies. So people in America would know Carpet Ones and Flooring Americas. There's about 3,000 of those stores. And so I would fly in there and help them with their companies. And in this case, they're family businesses. And so usually it was mom and dad and their son, or grandpa was working in the business. And then you have the aunts and uncles. And it's like this multi-generational family chaotic business where not a lot of people had kind of formal education. They just kind of learned it through grit. And 2007-8 happened to them too. And so they had these massive years of just making tons of money because everyone's buying floor because real estate's growing and every building needs a floor. And so they were making tons of money. They thought they were just amazing business owners, but it was just the it was the hand of the economy, right? That's what was making their business grow. It had nothing to do with their sales, nothing to do with their marketing, nothing to do with the merchandising, their pricing, their operations. It was just the market. And so when they were going down, that was when I was coming to work with them. And so I was helping them close down locations, helping them go through bankruptcy, helping them reorganize. And they just didn't understand what was happening, and really having to walk through with them some really challenging situations and making tough decisions about how to sharpen the pencil. That's where I got my start, and that was tough. I mean, tough to get someone to pay you money to fix their company when their company is going like this. But it was a great start. I learned a lot. I think most people, when they start consulting, they just learn, one aspect of the business. But for me, these companies were, maybe they're doing $2 to $5 million a year. Maybe they had, 10 employees. So they weren't that big. And so I would go in there and have to help them, with their financial forecasting or with their pricing or with their sales training or their outside sales training or with their leadership development or their branding or signage, because they didn't have any experts in-house. And so you'd have to kind of just be that for them. So it was great. It was great work. I mean, challenging work, but really, really fun work.
So it seems like you really got to learn like the intricacies and nuance of business from the role of an outsider. So you got to like peek into all of their different businesses and see how each one was run, the differences, the similarities. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was, you can't read about it in a book, that's for sure. Because in the book, it's like, well, you do this and this and this. But what if you fly into a company where the husband or wife are having problems and their son is an alcoholic and they need to grow? Well, it's a little bit different because they're probably not gonna fire their son. And, it's difficult to also, separate the husband or wife. And so you have to really be very creative with the solutions and pragmatic with them, because theory doesn't work in reality. And so you have to get a lot more scrappy with the solutions and not so much, theoretical. So it definitely put things into practice. And I think with larger companies, theories work a lot better because they can lose $1 million and it's no big deal. But when you're in a small business, you don't have time to watch that theory play out. You actually do need to make things happen next week or next month or next quarter, or you don't last any longer. And that's where things become very, very real.
Wow. So I think this is you have such an interesting perspective just from having been in the position that you were and the position that you are. What have you noticed as far as the tendencies or the I don't even know if it's a skill set, maybe a mindset, but like what do the better companies do that the lesser or worse companies don't do, or maybe it's the opposite? Like what's the difference between them?
Well, the the companies that are doing things right see reality as it is. I would say that's the big difference. And I mean, that's what our company Work the System does first is it's called, Sam coined it, this term of outside and slightly elevated. And we really want to make sure that they have a proper perspective on what's really happening in their business. Oftentimes owners, they marry or fall in love with, or, get conjoined with their business, and they have no sense of what is actually happening, and they have no outside perspective, and they just don't see what's going on. I mean, I won't share names, but I got a client. I really enjoy working with her, and she was talking to me about how she could not seem to get anyone to stick when she would hire somebody. Good candidates weren't coming, and when they did come, they didn't stick, and she just couldn't figure out why. What was she doing wrong? And super smart, good business for the most part. And I said, well, let's walk through and see what their package is. And she wanted her people to work 11-hour shifts, including for every Friday night and every Saturday. And she wanted to pay them $12 an hour. And I said,
not going to happen.
No one wants to ruin both their morning and get home at 7:30 or 8 at night every single night, and ruin their Friday night and Saturday night and get paid $12 an hour. I mean, this is not going to happen. You're not going to find anybody good who would ever take a position like that. And she's like, what do you mean? I work those hours. And it's like, well, you're the owner. And
you're not getting paid $12 an hour.
Right. And owners do things that are crazy. I mean, that's just the truth. Owners are willing to do things that are totally nuts and not see that an employee is just not going to do that. And so, just giving them that perspective and like, oh, maybe it could do a split schedule, maybe do a pay increase, maybe some incentives. Then people will come work for you, but no one's going to work that shift. And she just never knew that. And I think other people, so a lot of times as a consultant, you don't have to be like so brilliant. A lot of times it's just coming in there with a clear head, being that outside view. And so I get to do that, but that's the thing that companies that struggle the most is they don't have that perspective. And so they get stuck in loops of failure where they don't know why they're failing.
So it almost seems like on one side, there are just things that are going on that because the business owner is too close and like they're almost like zoomed in so far, they really can't see it. And it almost seems like they are attached to the business, like almost merging or attaching their identity to the business, to where changing anything or contradicting anything that's currently going on is like almost contradicting themselves. And then on the other side, or also what I believe I heard was that from that outside perspective, you just don't have that same bias. You can see those things that the business owner just can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very emotional to admit that you've done something wrong, and also admit that someone else could do something better, and that something different is better. And so it's really hard to change, very hard to change. And so I think an outside perspective can help from that. Oftentimes I will gather best practices from their employees, tell it to the owner, and just, since it's not from the employees, it'll, me saying the exact same thing will help them. So there's a lot of different tactics you can use, but in the end, they have lost perspective because they have tied their identity to the business. And so a big part of what we try to do is separate the business and you as separate entities. And so then you're trying to build up this entity of value that produces value without you being there. And we try to show people that future actually is possible. In Sam's book, the one behind me there, is a great example of that, because he was literally working 100-hour work weeks. He was sleeping at the business. He was living there, and he had been doing this for 15 years. And he was about ready to go bankrupt, about ready to like lose his health, lose his mind. And then he started to make a shift. That shift was to build systems. And then he went from a 100-hour work week to a 2-hour work week in a short period of time. And his income went up 20 times. And so the business actually did better the less he was there. And that took him by surprise, because he previously thought he had to be there for things to get done. And once he realized that he didn't have to be there to get things done, it really changed his life.
That is such a monumental shift. 100 hours a week to 2 hours a week. making more money with the 2 hours a week. I mean, I know just from personal experience with the show,
Mhm.
for example, there was a time when I was doing all of the editing and all of the design work and all of the administrative things and uploading everything here and doing all the that's not the best use of the of your time.
Mhm.
It just certainly wasn't the best use of my time because you could pay somebody an hourly wage to do that, and that frees you up to then go from like that laser focused task that cannot be scaled no matter how many times you do it to then be able to focus on bigger and better things where you might be getting paid 100 times more than what you're paying somebody to do that same thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's when I work with owners and dissect what they do during their time. Oftentimes, I mean, they're doing the work themselves, or they're so used to doing the work, and I say, well, then who's doing the owner's job? And they say, what is the owner supposed to be doing? Well, the owner is supposed to be developing new products and developing new services and partnerships and opening new territories and branding and marketing and expansion and all those things, like team development, coaching, culture, like vision, like no one's doing those things. That's why your company is growing or is not growing, is because there's no owner of this company. There is no CEO. So CEO's job is to grow the company. There is no CEO. That's why it's not growing. You're just a worker in the business. And so it's like a chicken with its head cut off. So it just goes in circles and then eventually dies. Unfortunately, it's a kind of a morbid analogy, but you don't want to be that, because that is average companies, above average companies, even great companies. That is their destiny. Just look at the stats. Like that's what happens to companies, almost all of them. And then the ones that do survive, it'd probably be better off if they didn't survive, because the owners' lives are miserable. And the vast majority of those are worth nothing when the owner finally does sell it. It's worth nothing. They've built nothing of value. They've just kept a job for themselves that probably they would have gotten paid a lot more if they just became an employee somewhere. So, not to be depressing, but that is the reality. And you can't pretend like your reality is different when, if you've been grinding things out for 4, 5, 6 years and you're still in a yo-yo and you're like, maybe I should do something different now.
Well, I actually think that's very empowering. I think it's so empowering because that means there is a way out. There is such a better way to do things,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be working more hours. Like that that is so not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you just have to do it. I mean,
Yep.
sometimes you just have to grin and bear it and put in the time, especially when you're sitting there and you're building the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so curious about how you go, like that process of how you actually go into building the system, because I know I've built it for multiple businesses. I'm actually building another system for another one of my businesses right now. It's so relevant to that. So
Mm-hmm.
I know in the beginning there's like a lot of tinkering and building and tweaking and testing. The cool thing is, at least that I've found, once you finish it and you hand it to the people who make the machine run, it's actually a self-correcting vehicle because they're gonna find the places that it's broken, or they're gonna like figure out where it's not working, and they'll tell you, and then either you can tell them to fix it or you can fix it, or however that works. But it's like a self-correcting mechanism. Have you found that to be true?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if the idea is just in your head, and then you transfer it to someone else's head, and it's floating around, you can't ever analyze it on paper and correct it and refine it, because of course that person probably was going to leave at some point in time or switch positions in your company. So you have to have that unit, that asset that tells you how that thing is done, the recipe, right? I mean, I like to use the recipe analogy, because in a restaurant, what happens when employees come and go? Is the recipe going to be changing all the time? Are you going to be consistent with how that cheeseburger is made? And so I think it's really important to do it. And it to owners, it seems overwhelming, but you just have to lead and kick it off, even if it's a super small company. You don't have to do it all yourself. What Sam likes to say is that the systems are already happening. Like you're already doing sales, you're already doing marketing, you're already, like, they're happening in your business, and the systems are happening. They're just not very good yet. So you have to identify the systems you have, and then you need to codify them, how they are, and then you have to give them to someone else to then make better. And you give them a direction, like, hey, this is the end direction where we're going towards. Take this piece of the puzzle. I've given you a starting place, and then I want you to work with it, make it better and better and better. And they will. If you pick the right people, if you get A players. But if you don't give them that structure, then they're floundering, and they don't know what good looks like, and you're just stuck.
So when you're starting, you're basically saying that you try to take a snapshot of what you're already doing, because even if it's a broken system currently, it's still a system technically. So you take a snapshot of what's working, you codify it. How do you take a snapshot, and in what manner do you codify it?
Yeah, so this is a great question. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, there's software. So I mean, right now we're recording on Zoom, but you can record on Loom. I use Snagit. Some people use Camtasia. There's a lot of ways to screen record. So you can screen record how you do a process. That's one way to do it. Another way is to type up the process, maybe just an outline, rough outline, or even the specific steps. Also, what I like to do is do audio files. So I'll hit record on my computer, my cell phone, and I will list off the steps, especially things that are really loose, like I don't really know the steps, but this is kind of how I see it flowing. And then you can hand it off to someone else, and then they can then put it in writing, and then you can work with it afterwards. But the key thing is to get it out of your head. I had this one client where she was a psychiatrist, psychologist, mental health expert, and she was so busy that she had a list of procedures she wanted to systemize in her part of the business. And whenever she was driving from one location to another location, she would pull up the next system, and then she'd get her phone and just record, okay, so I'm going to tell you about this system, and here's the audience, here's the objective, here's what it does, step one, step two. She'd verbalize it, and within a month or two, she had the bulk of what she'd done out of her brain into systems, growing her team out. So all she did is just record audio files.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back for a second. How did you go from working with to like being one of the top dogs? Like, what was that transformation of your career, getting so intimately involved with Work the System?
Yeah, well, it was I can't say it was just like one thing that happened. Basically, Sam and I started together, and I was just a contractor. So I was flying around, helping him, doing some coaching clients. And then I became an employee of Work the System, and then I became partners with him, and then I bought him out recently. And so it's just been a ongoing relationship. We've really enjoyed working well together. He's been a great mentor. He's turning 70 in a few weeks, and so he's just retiring and doing more politics and things with his nonprofit. So it's been a transition based on experience, because I'm not the author of that book. I'm just the implementer of that book. And so my expertise is not his story, which is taking his business from nothing to as big as it is now. It's it's still in Bend, Oregon. My expertise is working with 1,000 companies, flying around the world, actually doing it. So it's a different tone, and it's been our audience, our following has been really good during the transition, because some people they have a really affinity to Sam, right? He's the author. They've read his book, changed their life, and so they have to get used to a new voice, a new face, sharing the message, because some people they really liked Sam's style, and Sam's style and my style are slightly different, but he and I still talk all the time, and it's the same message, same technique, same method, and so I would say my status is directly tied to the thousands and thousands of hours of actually doing the work. It's probably it.
So when you took the top dog position, how did you have to adjust the systems within the business, and how did you, because it seems like there's both like the business systems, and then there are like your own internal systems. How did you adjust to both of those?
Well, over the last year, we've kind of changed out some of our team. Sam's taken some of his team back. I've built up a new team. We've had to do that transition. And then so now that I own it, I can license other people to do the brand. And so instead of me just doing the work, I'm teaching people how to do the work the way I've done it before. And so teaching a ton. Right now, I'm working with 25 different coaches and facilitators and contractors to teach them how to do the work. And so we're trying to expand out the brand that way. And so that's been a different challenge. And I've got a gal working with me who's writing down my systems for me because I know that I can't one-to-one teach everyone everything. And so I record each session when I do training. And then also she's helping document those systems so that it's scalable, right? Otherwise, it's stuck. I'd be a bottleneck in that venture. So that's been a big transition from me actually working with the companies to me helping people work with the companies. And I think it's going to take a year or two to really work that through. But it's the only way we can really help nationally in a big way. I mean, I've got somebody right now who's getting certified who is a Pilates teacher. Now, am I going to be an expert in Pilates studio growth? Probably not. I mean, I know a thing or two, but I'm not the expert, right? Or somebody who is a mechanic, or someone who's an insurance agent, or somebody who buys and sells companies. This other person who's really into, supply chain management. I know enough about each one of these areas and I've worked with clients in those areas. But if somebody's spent their whole life in that area and they get certified, they can really jump right into that space and be really successful.
Carve out their own path using the framework. That's really interesting.
Yeah, because I think that so our whole method, it works with any company. I mean, it really is it's a framework that you can just bolt on to any business that wants to grow. But for instance, I was working with this nonprofit that does mental health for children and families. And so was I an expert in that field? No. But what I did is I helped them build their systems, right? And so a lot of people can do that with the industries that they're really familiar with and really provide a lot of insight and structure. And it's one of those things that's mathematics. It's like the more systems you build, the more efficiency they're going to have. Therefore, they're going to be able to grow faster. They're going to actually have less waste and expenses, less problems, better employees, better training. It's kind of like, it's just math. So I know when I get those people out there in the field, if they just help people build their systems, those companies will get better. The owners will have more time. And the results just take care of themselves as long as you stick with it long enough.
On your journey, getting to this place from, probably not thinking that you would be in this place when you started, what have you learned about yourself?
That you can change, right? Well, that and that you actually do have that everyone has a unique gift. I think I've learned that for sure, but myself and everyone else I work with. And you should not set ceilings or parameters or restrictions on what you can do and what you should do and who you are. Because previously it would be like, well, I'll never be on camera. Right now we're doing a live stream. Never be on social media. Never do a podcast. Like I was just like, well, these are, and they were limiting beliefs, that I'd put on myself. As opposed to instead of thinking about putting limiting beliefs, why not thinking big and broad about the future and not so much just limiting. And so with the clients I work with, and myself included, there are really 6 main things that will, maybe it's 5 or 6 main things. As I walk through them, I'll figure out what the number is, that really prevent people from scaling themselves, like me personally, or their businesses. Now, one is their mindset. If their mindset, has limiting beliefs about who they are, what they can achieve, their value to the world, their skills, they're going to stop. Like they're going to say, I'll never grow a company beyond $200,000 a year, or I'll never go beyond a personal income of $80,000 a year, whatever it is. Like they've set a bar and they will get comfortable when they hit that bar. Let's just say their bar is $100,000 a year. They're going to stick there forever. And they have to, change their mindset. That's one thing that I've learned about myself is I have to change my mindset if I ever want to grow. Like you have to be the leader for your business. And if you're not going to grow as a leader, not going to happen. Next thing is the strategy. You have to be able to adjust your strategy. The marketplace is dynamic, competition is dynamic, it's worldwide. And so you have to be able to, build a strategy that's robust and is going to last and stick to it. A lot of companies never put their strategy in paper. And because of that, they will flounder without a strategy. Basically, their strategy is emotionally react to whatever stimulus comes their way. Instead of, I'm going to set a course And things that are not conducive to my strategy are going to bounce off quickly. Things that are conducive are going to come into my strategy, and I'm going to make my strategy better and stronger and more resilient as I go forward, and have those boundaries and that framework set up. Most people never do that. That was something that after Sam and I transitioned, I had to really refine and define for myself. I think that was key towards moving faster and attracting the right people. The next is the team. So let's just say, in my case, mindset, I get that right. I get the strategy right. Well, if I'm by myself, it's pretty limiting, right? I'm not going to get very far. And so realizing that I had to build out my new team based on Sam using his other team for his other businesses. And then realizing that my team is required to go further. There's only so far that I can go. And if you're really small and you have a team of 1 right now, well, a team of 2 is going to make a huge difference. And then a team of 3 is going to make a massive difference. Now, once you have a company of 1,000, 1 more employee is not going to make a big difference. But when you're small, each new person dramatically affects how far your company can go and how many people it can work with. And so I think the team building is hugely important, even from the very beginning. Another big shift was business systems, of course. And so let's say you got a team, strategy, mindset. If you have no systems, again, you're going to be capped out by the dysfunction that happens, because the more complicated your business gets, and the more fast you try to move, the more things are going to fall off, the more wheels are going to fall off, the more it's going to break. And so you got to put the business systems in place, which is what we're doing right now as we're growing out this coaching and consulting firm. And the last thing is your personal systems. So you as a person, as a leader, how productive and efficient and trained and knowledgeable personally and business-wise are you as a leader? And if you're not willing to grow, again, you're going to cap things out. And I've seen owners get all the pieces right, but then personally, their life is a mess. So, the bad eating habits, bad sleeping habits, bad relationship habits, maybe divorce, kid issues, you name it, or they're just missing an educational piece and they're going to be capped out. And so for me, I've really been focused on those. I guess it's 5 different things, making sure that I'm growing each one of those areas, because any one of those areas is going to cap my growth. So if I'm great on all those areas, but my business systems are at a level 2 out of 10, then I'm just going to stop there. Like I won't be able to go beyond that. But then once I get my business systems in place, maybe it's my strategy that is limiting me, or maybe it's my team that's limiting me. But one of those things is going to limit your trajectory upwards. And so you have to kind of always be gauging what level you're at with each of those areas if you're going to really keep going upward.
You run into the same, I don't think problem's the right word, but like the same scenario where you're like too close to yourself. And so you need to have that outside view looking in to help you gauge yourself. Like, how would you be able to identify your own limiting beliefs? That's just an example of the greater question.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in the market looking for another business coach, because I've been working with Sam so long and he's off to another trajectory. And so I got to start, because I still talk with him regularly, but getting another one is actually on my to-do list, because I have people in my life, relationship wise, friend wise, and spiritually at church, things like that. But in terms of business, that is something I'm actually looking out to do. Just last night, I was thinking I should probably just start a mastermind group of other business leaders that are in the same situation I am. But I think it's great. I think it's really important to have those people. I play that part for a lot of companies I advise. But likewise, I'm looking for my next advisor, because I know how important it is, how valuable it is, and how you can get off track without thinking that through. And I think for people who aren't going to get a coach or advisor, you can have your team do that for you as well. The people on my team, I tell them in each of the areas where they have expertise beyond me, like, you tell me what I'm doing wrong. You tell me your feedback. I'm not just paying you to edit this or write this. I'm paying you also to give me strategic advice. Doesn't mean I'm going to use it or take it, but the people who are close to you, it really does matter. And I have all A players. And so I really do value what they say, because they want me to succeed as well, because it's good for them. It's good for everybody. And so I think really empowering your team to do that is key. But ultimately, it won't take the place of someone who is a coach or advisor over you. Big companies have a board of advisors. Small companies typically have their spouse, that's all they got. And it's really scary. And so I can't say that how do I put this? Because of my experience, I know a lot of things can go wrong, which helps me, but still it doesn't help me from the me lying to myself. And I think that any owner will do that to themselves.
So what's next? Like, I know we talked about the coach, but I mean, where do you see like your vision? Where do you see yourself and the company going? And then kind of the two-part question is, one of the things you said earlier, I believe I heard, was not limiting yourself. And I think about this all the time. Like, am I limiting myself without actually realizing that I'm limiting myself? So the two parts are, one, what is the vision? And two, how do you constantly challenge that vision to try to take it higher and higher and higher? And is there ever a limit to that? I know that's a lot of questions, but.
Yeah, well, I'm just really thankful I ran into Sam. It's just an amazing method and book. I mean, I've used it to help people in all sorts of strange situations, lose 10 pounds, fix their marriage, grow their company, sell their company. It's just a great framework to see reality and help things scale. And so previously, I wasn't taking it to the max because I was just doing the work myself. But now there really is no limit. I mean, essentially, anyone who owns a business who feels like they're enslaved to the business, working too many hours, and wants to have more freedom and to grow it, this is a method that works. So it's as simple as that. And so really, if I can get thousands and thousands of coaches out there certified, that still won't be enough. I mean, there's so many companies, and the companies, I mean, I've got clients in China, I got clients in Singapore and Australia, and I mean, you name it, I've got clients all over the world. They've got the same problems. I mean, I had a dairy farmer in Transylvania, same problems with his business, working too many hours. So it's not like it's just in the U.S. It's everywhere. I mean, clients in Switzerland and Russia, it's all over the world. Same condition, same problems. I don't speak all the languages, but that's why I want to just get as many people equipped with the right way to help these companies in a very simple way. And that's it. Building. We're on a mission to set entrepreneurs free from the slavery of their own businesses. And I think that's a message that really can translate in all languages. And so who knows where the end game is? I mean, we're just starting, I'm in my late 30s. And so we're really just starting. I mean, I could see this being massive, and that's what I want to do. And so the bigger I can make it, the better. And I've purposely set it up where it's not just, hey, you got to pay consulting fees, so you got to pay us $50,000. I know that's out of range for most companies, which kind of brings up an interesting story. When I started off consulting, I had an advisor. He was a business consultant. He's probably 65 now, not my advisor anymore. And he said, Josh, just don't work with any companies that do under $100 million in sales, because they can't pay you what you're worth. They're a hassle. They're annoying. They're not going to really make the changes anyways. So just stick with bigger companies and you'll be fine. And he said, just work hard for 10 years. You'll have a big database of clients by then. You'll be fine. And I was like, well, I think there's this other, this whole market of people who don't get help because they got smaller companies. He's like, well, they can't pay. And, he basically said, just don't worry about it. Go with bigger companies. And I've worked with bigger companies. And they do pay better. And it is easier work. But I saw that the real problems that really destroys families, the destruction is catastrophic when companies go out of business, was in these small business owners. And so that was the huge market. That was my expertise. That was my experience. And I always wanted to figure out, how do I set up a way to help these people that's not cost prohibitive? They're not going to pay $5,000 a day to have me hang out at their business. It's just not going to happen. And nor would I advise them to do that. They don't have the money. The ROI is going to take too long to happen. And so how do I break that up? And so work the system, a big part of what we've tried to do is, yes, we can deliver to bigger companies and do these kind of events, but we want to do, group coaching. So it's really inexpensive, or one-on-one coaching, or a mastery club, which is really inexpensive. extremely valuable and help them on their journey, but priced so that it's not going to kill their cash flow as they're building up these assets. So that's the one big shift for our business. The other thing is realizing that we are not the answer to every business problem. You might need a lawyer. You might need a marketer. You might need somebody to help you with advertising or branding or messaging. You might need somebody to help you write your first book or, buy some real estate. So I'm acquiring different experts in each of these fields to then be my go-to source. And so we're not just this one thing. We're also the go-to source for anyone who needs help. Like, we got relationships with different software companies. So if you need these softwares, we're going to help you and strategically help you not buy from us, but buy from somebody we know you can trust. And so that's been a big shift for us as well, is knowing that if people are going to come to us for help, that doesn't mean that I have to be the expert in everything. I just need to know where they can get help.
That's so cool. That shift of like working with other people, and it almost seems like strategic partnerships, and then recognizing like, okay, this is actually the niche that I care about. Mm-hmm. Even though the $100+ million company is like maybe a little bit easier, but this is where the real passion is. Because you're right. I mean, if a family business doing, I don't know, 50 million a year, like if they crumble, that could destroy a family, which is awful, which has ripple effects in their community and the lives of all those people. And that doesn't just go away in a week or two. Like, that has really long lasting effects. So that seems super, super important.
I mean, businesses are made up of people. I mean, you're working with real people. And so the work matters. I think everyone's work matters. And so that's why we got into space. And it really has been a shift that, I mean, you and I will talk afterwards about what you do, because I think it's great. I mean, I'm not an expert at getting people capital, but that some of my clients need that. And I help them out with lending sometimes, but I would prefer to have a go-to source where I could say, yes, we help small businesses grow who are struggling, but we're not the ones who do all of those things. We have people that we really partner with, who we trust. And that's where we want to position ourselves in the marketplace, is, the go-to source for helping business owners who are stuck break free and scale. And yes, our method's going to help you do that. But along the way, you're going to need that attorney. You're going to need that bookkeeper. You're going to need that, financier to help you over the certain hurdles along the way. And we're there to help you make that happen. So that's the positioning we want to have in the marketplace, because in the end, there's going to be ups and downs in our industry, every industry. And we want to build a brand that's resilient during those ups and downs, and not just based on one trick pony.
That's awesome. So Josh, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show today. And I want to be very respectful of your time. So I do have one more question for you, then we'll wrap it on up. But what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Gosh, you had so many good questions. I don't know. Maybe you should ask me what book I like the best, which would be the one back there, Work the System. Yeah. So that would be good. Yeah. I would say Work the System was a book, but I think that the one thing, and maybe we've alluded to it earlier on, but I would say is don't be stuck in fear as if what you do is going to how do I put this? Don't be stuck in fear as if you have to know all the answers before you make a decision, make a move. So one of our principles at Work the System is that your next move will inform your next move. So don't wait to know all the answers. It's okay to make a move, knowing that after that move happens, then you'll know what to do. And that's really what's helped me in a lot of my coaching, consulting, a lot of things I've done, is just realizing that I have confidence that I can figure out the answer. I have confidence that the answers will come when they need to. I just need to take one step forward. And that's all that's required. And so for your listeners who are new to entrepreneurship, new to starting business, they need to get off the fence and just pitch that idea, pitch that client, pitch whatever it is, and they will learn and develop by doing the work. So one of my friends says, work begets work. And so in the idea of sales. And so, so to not have all the answers first, but just to get out there and do it. I mean, I would have never gotten anywhere in consulting if I waited until I knew what to do. Like my first my first big consulting gig after being in it for a couple of weeks was, this company had 5 locations. They were doing like $10 million in sales, a bunch of flooring stores. And they were like, hey, fly in there. We need you to help them unroll their business and do a bunch of layoffs, and then do their PR, and then also help them refinance it all. I had no idea how to do any of that. I mean, zero. But one day at a time, learning, connecting with people, asking for advice, and working with advisors. It's fine. Most of the things in life are not beyond you, but you have to be willing to step in there and then learn as you go. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck.
That's brilliant. And there's actually a lot of psychology that backs up what you're saying, because I believe, and if there are psychologists out there or scientists or people smarter than myself, of which there are many who can correct me, please do. But to my knowledge, when we're operating in a state of fear, it actually restricts the higher level thinking in our brains, because we're not, like, our brains are trying to protect us. So if we're scared, it's like, hey, I need to kick into like action mode. And so, I'm not able to like think about things. And so if you're always operating from that mode and you're just kind of stuck, it's never going to get fixed by remaining in that same place. Mm-hmm. It's never good. Like, staying in that same place is never going to get better. And you know what? The only way to learn how to do that stuff and to get rid of the fear is to go try it. And who knows? The way that everybody else does it, if you had known what you were doing, could be a worse way than the way that you would think of organically. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who knows? You may come up with a whole brand new thing.
Yeah. Sam's phrase is minority of one. He says, do everything with that mindset, as you are okay, totally comfortable being the minority of one, doing it your own way, doing it your own way. Because with his business, he runs an answering service. They make one mistake every 15,000 phone calls. And so in that industry, usually it's like one mistake out of every 500 phone calls. So they're not even close to normal. That industry usually gets like a 3% net profit. They're at about 35% profit. Like, they're not even operating anywhere close to normal. And that was how he always wanted to be. He's like, I'm not trying to be like anyone else. I'm not trying to be normal. I'm just trying to do my thing and do it the best. And the other thing I like to leave for the audience, which I think it's really helped me a lot, especially as an entrepreneur, especially when you feel like you are always behind the 8 ball, not finishing things, unsuccessful day after day after day, because you see, in my case, you see Tony Robbins has been doing this 40 years and you're only 2 years into it. And gosh, you'll never get as far as him, right? Is to realize that each day, and I think this is actually true, biblically true, is that each day can be a success, because each day you are actually equipped with all the time, talent, money, resources, connections that you need to be successful today. As long as you steward today properly, you actually execute today properly, you can be a success today. And not to live out tomorrow or next week or last week. Just live out today with what you've been given, and you can make today a success. And I think that's really helped me, as opposed to thinking, oh, I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough money to do this. I don't have enough. It's like, actually, you do have enough to do what you're supposed to do today. You might not have enough to do what you want to do today, but you actually have enough to do what you're supposed to do today. And as long as you're sticking with what you're supposed to do today, you'll be fine. That's when you go outside that and you start dreaming about things that aren't even in reality. That's when you get frustrated.
Rock on, brother. I love that message. And thank you again very, very much, Josh, for coming on the show, for being awesome, for sharing your awesomeness. Thank you. Thank you, really.
Enjoyed it.
And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank y'all so much. I love y'all. I do. I tell you all the time, and I'm going to keep telling you, because y'all rock. So thank y'all for sticking with us. I'm very grateful for y'all's time too. So thank you all. Thank you, Josh, and I'll see all of you on the next episode.